Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Leicestershire and Rutland Safer Community Strategy Board. So item 1 is introductions. I think most of us know each other, so I think we'll just carry on with the agenda. So item 2 is minutes to the previous meeting, pages 3 to 8. So first page is just attendees. Anything on page 2? Page 3? Page 4? Page 5? And page 6. Are we all happy to accept those as an accurate record? Okay, any matters arising? I didn't pick anything up. Okay, and then on to item 4 is the LRS CSB action log. I think most of these are being dealt with or are in the process of being dealt with, so I didn't pick up anything on there. Has anyone else got any issues with the action log that they wanted to pick up?
No, I think most of them are going to be covered today on the meeting today, or they're sort of long-term things that are being worked on.
Thanks, Ewan. Okay, on to item 5. Any declarations of interest from anyone? No? Okay, I just need to say I've got to go on a government webinar at 10:45, so we'll be leaving the meeting at 10:40 and handing over the chair to the Vice Chair, Councillor Wise. So if we're in the middle of an item at that point, I will just disappear and Councillor Wise will pick up. So just so you're all aware that I will be leaving halfway, well, not halfway through the meeting, but after 40 minutes. Okay, we'll move on to item 6, a probation service update, and I can see Bob's here, so I'll hand over to you, Bob.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. And yes, and my apologies, and thanks for putting me first on the agenda because I need to leave the meeting at 10:30. And the reason for that, I think I mentioned it in my report, is that we've been subject to full inspection the last 2 weeks. I think I put down on my report that it ends on the 26th. That was wishful thinking. It actually finishes today, the 28th. And it's my final meeting with the inspector this morning, which is why I need to leave this morning's meeting. So my apologies for that. And thanks for putting me on early on. So I'm assuming people have seen obviously it's in the pack and have read the report. So what I shall do is I shall just highlight some issues and then take any questions that people have. There's also a couple of updates since I wrote and submitted the report. Just to say, I think sort of caught my highlight is that I think I've been reporting to this board and other boards for some while now about our recruitment and staffing issue for some while. I'm pleased to say that is getting better, and we're on a much better position staffing wise than we were this time last year or even this time 6 months ago. However, and as I think I mentioned later on in the report, what that gives us, which I think quite a lot of employers are in the same situation in the public sector, is quite a young and inexperienced staff group, which I still think will require quite a bit of development and ongoing training to get us to a place where we want to be. But obviously, good news that we're in a better place staffing wise. I've mentioned there the Phoenix programme. I don't know whether that'll come up in any other reports, but that's a programme about violence against young people. It's a multi-agency programme that YEF funded, Youth Endowment funded, which is being extended to December, which is great news, and that's been very much led by the VRN, but with probation as one of the key partners. I think one of the main things I want to talk about is the prison capacity crisis, which absolutely dominated certainly my life and others in the criminal justice system and other supporting agencies last year. The various things that occurred, government initiatives did ease the crisis. I think we were thinking that that would give us quite significant breathing space, and I think I mentioned in the report that we were looking to probably getting in a similar situation again the end of 2025. What is becoming very apparent is that I think the MOJ is concerned about prison capacity issues sooner than that we will be back into crisis mode sooner than that. And in fact, the Local Criminal Justice Board for LLR has just stood up the Gold Group again to manage the situation with regard to prison overcrowding. And I know that prison cells are already being potentially used. So police cells. So again, I suppose it's obviously a worry for all of us, but for me in the probation service, it means that quite a lot of the things that we would like to do in terms of developing things and working will be somewhat overtaken by our need to respond to any measures that come in. So I think, unfortunately, that could well be a feature of 2025 as it was in 2024. Alongside that is a sentencing review that the government is currently undertaking, looking at, and one of the things that is governing that sentencing review is about having a sentencing framework where less people are going to prison for short sentences and more people are dealt with on commuted sentences. I think that's a move in the right direction. However, for the probation service, that's again is a significant implications in terms of additional workload for us. And I think that just leads on to the key issue. So I've mentioned early release scheme. We had a thematic inspection, that's a national one, but we were part of it last year around working with young adults. We got some very good feedback on the work of our young adult team and the way we work with youth justice teams in city and county. And that I know from early feedback I'm getting from our own inspection this week that the work with youth justice teams and ourselves is going to be highlighted in our own inspection as well, but we will continue our work and implementation on that. The third point, I've no doubt we shall have an action plan out of our inspection, so we'll be working on and reporting to this board and others on that. And just finally, on a personal note, for various reasons, I've been asked to cover Derby City Probation Service for various reasons. So I shall be temporarily just covering Derby for 3 or 4 months. But I can let you know that my temporary replacement as head is Kay Knowles, who some of you will know. She's a deputy head of the probation in Leicestershire and is well known to a number of partners. So I'm very pleased that she's been she'll be moving to that post because I think it'll make it a very smooth transition, particularly on the partnership scene where she knows the partnership scene well and is known. So that's it. That's the highlights for me. So I'll see if anyone's got any questions.
Thanks, Bob. And I know how stressful an inspection can be. So I feel your pain.
Yes, we only had one 2 years ago, but there you go. Well, such is life.
That's a bit quick, that is. Just on the early release scheme and obviously recall, is that impacting on us now hitting crisis point again? Do you think that there was early releases but then there was lots of recalls?
Not yet, but it will do. What I think we have is we had such a good partnership response that actually ended up a bit of a sort of national exemplar through last year. So part of the idea of getting the LCJB Gold Group up together is basically just restarting what we did before, so that we had good partnership buy-in with that. So yes, it will create some strains. At the moment, I don't know the exact detail of it. We just know from what we're hearing that there will be measures in place to address it. I think the MOJ are worried about were there to be a repeat of some of the public disorder that happened last summer. If that were to happen again this summer, that would certainly bring forward capacity issues. So there's one or two unknowns, but I think what is generally known and what we're getting very strong messaging on is that we felt we had a bit of space until the end of the year when things would get to crisis point again. It's looking like it's going to be sooner than that. But we're in a good place in terms of building on what we did on a multi-agency basis last year in terms of reinvigorating that.
I think it's just that public perception, isn't it, that any crime that was committed was by someone that had been early released, wasn't it? And that was
and that, in fact, there weren't. There was,
yeah.
in fact, we didn't have any serious further offences from any early releases, and so in fact, because I think it was so tightly managed and such good buy-in from other agencies, actually, in many ways, a lot of our practice collectively in managing prison releases was probably enhanced last year, even though the numbers were greater, because everyone was engaged in the process. So, which shows you what you can achieve with that collective approach. Yeah.
So I think there was some great learning from that, wasn't there, especially for us locally. Yeah. And, I hope you will be back soon. I won't be in Derby too long.
Yes.
Leicestershire's much nicer than Derby, obviously.
It is. I've worked in Derbyshire before, and I'm not just saying this, but I think the partnership scene across the board in LLR is I haven't seen it replicated somewhere else. I'm not just saying that. So yes, I shall miss it, and I shall be back soon. Then.
Thank you. Sharon.
Yeah, I'm not sure this is the right time, but I'm sure you'll tell me. We've got quite a lot of offenders in Melton through that are stealing from shops, and they're feeding their drug addiction or alcohol addiction, and it seems like a vicious cycle that, like, they come out, they steal repeatedly to feed the habit, they're straight back in, and it's just this vicious cycle all the time. I know they've got to want the change, but what is there that it's there to try and support them? Because if we don't break this cycle, it's going to be the same cycle all the time.
Well, there's plenty there to support them, and as you rightly say, it's whether somebody is prepared to take that support. One thing that I would say has in recent months we've made quite a lot of strides on is something called continuity of care, and what I mean by that is what used to happen was that somebody might get some intervention around their drug use in prison, then they'd come out and it would start all over again with the community-based provider. What a lot of work has been happening with the LLR Drug Strategy Group is actually building in a much more joined up approach between treatment that starts in prison and treatment that continues on the outside. However, I would say there's still quite a way to go on that. I think there are there's quite a lot of drug interventions out there that aren't being used and it's the age-old problem of engaging them in them. So I would say the services are there, and the local authority contributes to them quite significantly, but engaging people in that is that's forever been the challenge. And I think certainly shop theft is a key symptom of, as you rightly say, and I know that the police are doing a considerable amount in terms of bringing that back up the priority list than perhaps it has been in recent years, in terms of, because it is a symptom of such a ingrained issue that I think it's in the past it's sometimes been sort of seen as a low level crime, but I think given the scale of it now and the symptom of it's getting a lot more prominence now than it is. Part of the problem is the sentencing. So, giving somebody 3-4 weeks prison or whatever, 3-4 months prison for shop theft, it doesn't work in breaking the cycle. It just doesn't. Anything you're trying to do with it. So the sentencing review, it'll be interesting to see if they're saying that prisons can't make short prison sentences. It'll be interesting to see whether that does have an impact or not.
Sorry, I was just Sharon. Yeah. It's really hard because obviously we've got quite a lot of independent shopkeepers that can't take the hit, and they don't want the trouble in the shop. But then you've also got to address the problem as well, which is the addiction, and it just seems like a never-ending circle. And like you say, the engagement is. It is their choice to want to make the engagement, but as well, I think when they've been doing it for a lot of years, and sometimes it's the background they come from, they're convinced that the low-hanging fruit, and they can't, they've perhaps not got the families to support them, a lot of them, and they just don't see why they need to make the change because they're tired as that anyway, and Yeah, I don't know what the answer is, but I think
I think if we knew the answer to that, we'd be in a lot better position. We just keep plugging away. I think one thing that there has been quite a drop off in recent years is residential treatment facilities, which is often about taking people away from their immediate environment and working on their addiction that way. It's not always the answer, but sometimes for those people with long held entrenched patterns, that can be the only way, but they are very, very difficult to access now for various reasons.
Thank you. Any other questions for Bob before we let him go? Okay, thanks very much for joining.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. I should hang off a little bit before I go to my next meeting, but
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, on to item 7, the Office of Police and Crime Commissioners update, pages 10 to 15. So, Saj, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Just quickly get my report up. I'm just going to paraphrase my report, if that's okay, and just pick out the main bit. So 2 out of the 3 streams that we were delivering as part of Safer Streets has been delivered. So that's the neighbourhood crime delivery that we did in Albion Wigston, as well as the ASB in Melton. So that was done ahead of schedule. All the KPIs were met, some were exceeded. We have been told that there isn't going to be additional funding for next year for Safer Streets 5, so it seems like this might just be the final year. The CSP contracts have all been renewed, so I've sent them out recently. I think a lot of our partners have received that. I think the main thing I wanted to kind of raise today is I've got my colleague James with me today as well. We've got some funding for a business crime initiative. I think that kind of links in quite closely with what Councillor Butcher was saying, and we're looking at potentially funding some initiatives. James, do you want to kind of talk a little bit about that?
Yes, thank you, Saj, and thank you everyone for your time this morning. Yeah, quite timely actually, as Councillor Butcher mentioned. I just wanted to take this opportunity to flag a new business crime initiative that will be rolling out over the upcoming months. And just to give you a heads up really, to start thinking about how you can support it and be involved. So the new Police and Crime Plan is committed to reducing retail crime, particularly shoplifting and assaults on shop workers. So part of this is ensuring that businesses are supported and equipped with tools to increase reporting rates and feel better supported overall, really, and that their issues are taken seriously and investigated well. So over the upcoming months, we're aiming to co-produce some solutions with CSPs and town bids, those that are most impacted by these issues, basically. And for those of you who've got high rates or growing concerns in this area, please start to think about how best you might be able to make this work. We see this approach as essential, really, in ensuring buy-in from those independent local retailers that you mentioned there, Councillor, and those who are most impacted. But also at the same time, that commitment and resourcing from bids and CSPs and ourselves is going to be crucial to the success of this. So I'm currently devising a kind of applications, kind of expression of interest process, and I'll be distributing that across this network once ready, if that's permissible, Chair. So I suppose initially we'll have an amount of body-worn cameras to distribute to repeat victims, and that's with the aim of driving down shoplifting and assaults, whilst also supporting improved access to evidence for when reports are made. Now, the second part of this initiative is going to be to co-produce further solutions with yourselves, something that may be a bit more tailored to your individual areas, such as potential target hardening and other things like that. I know a lot of you already have some initiatives ongoing as well, so it'd be great to learn a bit more about that. But regardless of which areas end up being involved in this initiative, it'd be great to develop a more unified approach with existing initiatives, any business crime reduction partnerships and DISC networks that exist across LLR at the minute. And it's something that I was thinking about as well, what Bob was just talking about there. Eventually, these networks could potentially contribute to a more joined up working around rehabilitation to break that cycle. But yes, that's basically it. That's kind of like pitch my stand. Thank you for your time. I can put my email in the chat, but yeah, as I say, over the upcoming weeks I'll be sort of progressing this more. I just hope that this platform would be a good kind of launch pad for it. So
do we have James, do we have a an amount of funding? Do we know what the funding is going to be yet?
We have 100,000 towards the initiative as a whole, but with regards to the element available for the kind of co-production stuff, we're unsure at the minute. It just depends on a few other things around the amount of cameras that we procure, and also what the kind of options are across the table. So I'm happy to have a chat with any interested councillors or CSPs about what the extent of your offer is currently. I know obviously there's a lot going on, and it isn't, some areas are higher than others, but it's all a problem, isn't it? So we're aiming to kind of obviously maximise what there is available.
Okay. Just I suppose it would be different in different areas, isn't it? But obviously, just in my little village, we had a real hit with shoplifting in all our little independent shops.
Yeah.
And I set up a business WhatsApp group, and all the businesses just signed into it. So as soon as one of the shops got hit, it went on the WhatsApp group, and then everyone's on guard, and it kind of just stopped it. So there's just very simple things that you can do, and it's just that communication, join up in local areas. And I know Melton had the security guards that they paid for, didn't they? And that kind of helped it and stuff like that. So, but then it just moves it to somewhere else, doesn't it? We don't actually solve it. So that's a much bigger question, isn't it? But if we're protecting our areas, that's what we can do. But some very simple things do actually work really well, and they just get scared off and move somewhere else. So there are things we can do. Sharon, did you want to come in now?
Yeah, I was just going to say, we do the smart radio scheme. So all the businesses have the radios, and after COVID, it went a bit poor. There wasn't many, but one of the shopkeepers that does computers, so he's really good with the radios, he's actually done them all himself and got some new radios in. So literally every shop in our town all of a sudden now has the radio. They've just started. We've got about 100 now on the disky. So that's the reporting and the evidence. So that's had a boost since Christmas, where everyone's doing that. As you say, we have the security guys walking around, which which the shopkeepers have felt a lot safer for. But I think that stopped yesterday. But yeah, so the smart radio and warning each other is really good. But like you say, it just moves on the problem. But the smart radios are really good. If anybody doesn't use them at the minute, they're really good. And I believe we're going to put one in where our CCTV is monitored, so they can sort of hear what's happening and zoom straight into that, target that area on the CCTV. So that'd be good as well.
Right, did you want to come back?
Yeah, just to kind of follow on from that, really. So yeah, the disc networks are fantastic. But one of the capabilities of it is to, and talking about displacement of crime, is to kind of link them across Leicestershire. And so like you can then identify there's a OCG on the move, or there's, a group of people and whatnot. I think it's maybe, and this might be generalistic, more OCGs who would move around, whereas you get those repeat offenders who are released to an area such as, Melton, and that revolving door is potentially a different side of things. But yeah, to kind of maybe link up the approach would be a fantastic eventual output of this as well. But yeah, like I say, I'm happy to sort of chat to anyone outside of this meeting and sort of progress it.
Okay, and I think it's going to be a bit of trial and error, different areas trying different things, and then us all to come together to see what's really helped and make sure we put the funds into that, isn't it? So yeah, really good proposal. So look forward to seeing how that goes. Okay, thank you, James. Did you want to come back in, Saj, with the rest of your report?
Just the main thing being, we've just given, as I said, everyone's CSP contracts. I'm just slowly getting them back at the moment. They've reverted back to the base amount. So this was before like the underspend uplifted it. We had a tiny underspend this year, so a lot less than last year. So it worked out as about just a little over £4,000 in total. It was higher, but something like 28,000 went towards helping the e-scene migration as well. So when you factor that in, plus about a little over 6,000 to help County Council with the ASB yearly ASB training that they do, the Ask for Angela nationally updated posters as well, and there's some IDVA training that for a specific staff member. It just came up to about 4,000 following that, so quite a very low underspend. So I've put the figures in the report in terms of what the base amounts are. These are generally still, this is following the formula that we did a couple of years ago, basically. So for the county areas, it's a lot higher previously than it was before Mr. Matthews came in and things. So yeah, it's just more a case of if you have any other questions. We did a police crime panel report not too long before I actually wrote this, so it didn't seem right to kind of just copy and paste large portions on that. The more in-depth updates are in there, and I've put a link to that in my report as well.
Okay. And just the rollout of the new case management system, do we know where we are with that yet, or are you not able to answer that?
I wouldn't know. I think Gurjit might be the better expert on this. There we go. Yep.
Yeah, I see it mentioned in your report. Just wondering where we are with that now.
I'll be giving that update in the ASB item,
Okay.
Chair.
Thanks. Okay, thank you. Saj, anything else on this item from anyone? No? Okay, thanks, Saj and James. Okay, on to item 8, the Safer Communities Performance Update, pages 19 to 22. And I think, Anita, you're taking us through this.
Thank you, Chair. So the report has had a bit of a facelift in the sense that this is a summary report of Q3 for the Safer Communities performance, and the key highlights are noted from the points 5 to 8. And I wonder, Chair, if you would like me to, I can demonstrate in terms of the dashboard. I don't know if members and colleagues go into the link, but would you like me to have a quick sort of swift through it so that we get an idea of how we read this?
Yeah, that might be a good idea, actually, Anita. Yeah, go ahead.
Can we see this?
Yeah, it's on screen now. Yep.
Okay, so really quite simple and straightforward to understand and read. So I won't go into all the highlights that I've noted in the report, but I'll mention point 5 and 6, and there's a recommendation at the end that to do with the youth offending side of data. So in terms of total crimes and violence with injury, this is improved over the last 2 years, and you can see that where it's green and there's a positive trend, and you can see that, you know, the sort of higher crimes were there, but we've been pittering it down, and this is the current quarter here, which is what we've noted. And then in terms of burglary, residential burglary and business and communities and vehicle offences, that's stabilised over the last sort of couple of sort of quarters in the reading. The yellow arrows, you know, you'll see if you hover over it, it says the current value is stable. So that's a good sign in some ways. So if I then, you go to this asterisk here in order to then find the next level that you might want to look at. So we look at the protect, support and most vulnerable in community. That will take us to the page where we're looking at the MARAC repeat referrals. You'll see. Oh, no, I've not changed it. I do apologise. Yeah. So here, in terms of a while ago, obviously that was quite high. The levels have kind of stabilised, and in terms of currently we're on 35.6%. And just as a reminder, the Safe Life's recommended upper threshold for this repeat referral is around 40%. So we're just under at the moment. And in relation to domestic crime and incidents, in Q1 to 3 saw a return to the previous trend line. So at the moment, you know, it's on a sort of lower scale, but it's stable, if you see what I mean, along there. Domestic violence with injury, the rates remain stable, which is this arrow, and you can see in the chart here. And then in relation, I will just show the ASB. So here, in terms of the ASB figures, the rate has increased from 4.75 to 5.9 82 over the last year. And what we need to note here is that the nuisance make up higher proportions of all ASBs, and that's reflected in this total figure. But the direction of travel is, you know, sort of deteriorating in terms of what we had previously, and the current rates are 7.93. But all other ASB figures are stable over the last few years, and you can see in terms of the chart lines there. So I will stop sharing now, Chair, but it gives you an idea of how to read these. And then also, if we move further along here, if I can, this side will give you the breakdown of all the different districts and boroughs. I'll just stop sharing now, Chair. Right. In terms of hate, obviously the figures are fairly low, and in relation to the reoffending of young people, since 2021, we've not really had any figures in the dashboard. And I think what we have looked at is that it would be recommended that going forward, if this data analysis could be brought to the board by the Youth Offending Service, because the figures don't come into the dashboard figures, and when they do, they're quite late. And we've not had any coming through for the last 3 years or so. So that's sort of a recommendation that's been put forward. And then we can ask Youth Offending perhaps to bring a separate report on their data, because it's in a different database. That's it, Chair. If there's any questions, I'm happy to take. But what I've done is that since Rick's report, I thought it's easier to make a summary of a template like this, so it's easier to understand. Then if people have got time and have had to look at the dashboard, if they've got any particular questions, that could be raised at the meeting.
Thanks, Anita, and I hope members do go into that report, because obviously can drill down to their own particular areas as well of CSPs in the city. And so is there any questions or comments from any members? Christine.
It's more a comment. It seems counterintuitive to me that if a crime is going up, we have a red arrow going down. I know what we're actually saying is it's getting worse, so hence, but for me, if crime is getting worse, we need a red arrow going up, and if it's getting better, we need a green arrow showing it's going down. I'm sure there's probably nothing we can do about the software package, but I feel I need to mention it.
Thanks, Christine. I'll leave that for them, but I don't know if there is anything they can do with the system, whether that's how it is.
Yeah, I'm not sure that there is, Councillor Wise. I will take that question back to our performance team that do this data dashboard and get a clear explanation, rather than me trying to. I have got an idea of what they would say, but I don't want to say it and be incorrect, if you know what I mean. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Anita. There's no more hands up for questions. So we'll move on to item 9, so the antisocial behaviour system procurement update. Gadgets.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just share a presentation. So I'll give an update on the case management system and where we're at the minute. Apologies, my computer isn't. Oh no, I've messed it up. Sorry. My computer isn't allowing me to do a to share the to show the presentation properly. So I'm going to have to keep it like this, I think. Oh, there we go. Is that better? Hello.
We can't see it at the moment, Gertrude.
No, nothing now at all.
Oh, sorry. I do apologise. Can you see that?
Yeah, we can see it, but obviously not in slideshow. You can't do so.
Right, let me try it once more, and then if not, we'll leave it like this. Is that better?
Yeah, perfect.
Right, perfect. Okay. So in terms of the background, members will recall that the Antisocial Behaviour Partnership across Leicestershire and Rutland produced an ASB case management system business case to look at the pros and cons of moving away from the previous system, which was called Sentinel, provided by a company called Vantage. Partners agreed, chief officers and members agreed that the findings of the business plan to move away from Sentinel, and requested that Leicestershire County Council lead that procurement exercise. So in terms of the progress today, this work's been going on for a good year or so. So where we're at the minute is that the Antisocial Behaviour Partnership Agreement has now been signed off by all partners. So that's Leicestershire County Council, Leicester City, Rutland County, all the districts and boroughs and the police. And this is really the legal agreement that gives us a jurisdiction to work together, and how we will work together in moving forward with this new system. The call-off contract, which is essentially the contract for Leicestershire County Council to procure the system, has been signed by both the County Council and the new provider eSINs. The information sharing agreement has now been circulated and it's been signed off by all partners. There's still a little bit of work to do around that, but the overarching agreement has been signed. All partners are devising their own data protection impact assessment, their DPIAs, and I've circulated a version of that, a really comprehensive version which the police have produced, which will enable partners to take out relevant parts for them and just make the process a little bit more easy. And we're just working up a memorandum of understanding for each partner at the minute. So some partners are using the system slightly differently, so we need to understand who's doing what, how they're doing it, and ensuring that we're compliant across Leicestershire and Rutland. In terms of the training, the org admins, as they're called, so these are essentially the super users, the people within each organisation who are kind of leading the eSINs work for their organisation. So they've all been trained. An e-learning package has been completed by the end of this week. We've devised a frequently asked questions sheet summary that will be loaded onto eSINs, along with other documents such as warning letters, contracts, etc. So in terms of where we're at with getting all this information up and ready for users, that's all been completed. In terms of data migration, this was our biggest risk, really. So Saj already mentioned the CSP underspend. So the risk has been getting the data migrated, ensuring we don't lose data, and actually ensuring that we're not moving data that's out of date and is going to clog the system up. Unfortunately, this did cost more than we originally envisaged, primarily because the data that Vantage were moving across was in a different format to what we had expected, and the expectation was that data would be moved and we wouldn't have to pay an extra cost for it, but the way that data would have been moved would have been essentially if we can envisage a black bin bag full of tens of thousands of cases with the attached paperwork and legal documents all shuffled about and handed over to eSINs, and that just would not have been possible for eSINs to get that loaded onto the new system in a timely manner. So it meant that we paid Vantage to give us the data in a way that eSINs could pick it up and load it onto the new system. Thankfully, partners really stepped up here with their underspends, and I know the city aren't here, but we should thank the city because they had the largest underspend and gave that up to the partnership to enable us to move forward with this. We have had moving timelines. A lot of the partners didn't come back with signed documents by by the timelines, which has meant that the live system has been slower in coming forward. The migration's been slower because we couldn't sign off the contracts, but we're there now and we're moving forward. The first migration is underway and has been undertaken. That's the first data migration. The second data migration will happen on the day that we actually stop using Sentinel, and that will be the go live date. So that is scheduled, and all developmental work should be completed by the 31st of March, and then we can move forward with the second data migration and the go live date. So we now have an ASB case management system coordinator in post, and his job going forward will be to ensure that the system is embedded across the partnership. He'll be the person to go to for support and advice. He's also going to be the person who will be able to, so he's got access to the Power BI app that the police have. So he'll be able to provide the districts and boroughs, City and Rutland, with up-to-date case management data and intelligence. So his name is Joe Sayre. Partners are aware, and he worked with us in getting to where we are now, so he's completely au fait with the system, with the challenges, etc. And to say that the system will continue to be developed, so on go live date, that is not the finished article. We will continue to develop it, and Joe will ensure that we do that. We're working to get victim first, catch 22 access to the system, so that they can support where we're looking at vulnerable victims, and all the org admins that I talked about earlier will now be able to set up their own people onto the system. So some of the risks, really, obviously new system, we are ready for some teething issues. Joe's in post, so hopefully he'll be there to support partners. We also have a number of people across the partnership who have been working on this, and we'll be able to support partners with the new system. Transfer of data is obviously clearly a risk area. Hopefully there won't be any issues here, but we've seen in other areas of business where there's been a new system, case management system, there invariably are often problems or issues. So we are ready for that, and we've put processes in place to make sure that we can pick that up. And then the other issue is that some partners who are already using eSINs have indicated they'll continue to use it in the manner that they currently use it, and that is a risk to the partnership. We're managing this, we're working with them, but the issue potentially there is that it could lead to inaccurate data and inaccurate intelligence, and the whole reason for moving really was to, on the back of the government's ASB action plan, is to ensure that we have good, strong data and intelligence across LLR on ASB. So in summary, I would have to say my 20-odd year career in community safety, this has been the most complex project I've ever led. But I did want to just thank a core group of people who have really worked so well and tightly on this, moving this forward so well and timely, in a timely manner. So Craig, Sean and Deborah from the police, Sarita is a consultant who supported on this, Sally's in my team, and then Charmel Borough Council colleagues who have really been the conduit between Vantage, the outgoing system Sentinel, and the project group to really support on the data migration, the contract cessation, and some of the real risks around that. I've mentioned the system will continue to develop as we move forward, and I see that as something that will be ongoing long term. And in the joint working agreement, we have stated that we will review the resource contributions by all partners. The formula has been in place for about 11 years, so I think it's a real timely opportunity to look at that and to look at some of the processes and documentation. So go live, I deliberately haven't put a specific day, bearing in mind some of the risks that I've alluded to already. We have, as a project group, a specific day in mind, but for the purpose of today, we're looking at around the second week of April. So that is the cut-off date where Sentinel will shut and the new system will be completely the one that we use. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Gurjit. I find the risk of inaccurate data a little bit worrying after all of this work that you and the team have done, considering that was what we were trying to avoid. Is there any support we can give you going forward to work on that?
Thank you, Chair. That's really helpful. So I'm not going to name and shame right in the meeting. It is a specific partner. I am working with them, but to have that minuted is really useful, because if we need that, then we can escalate it to the relevant chief exec and member. So thank you for that support.
Any questions from anyone else? I mean, that was a very thorough report, and I other than that, I didn't have any questions. Anyone else? Right, thank you very much, Gurjit. That was very useful. Next on my agenda is the Domestic Homicide Review Partnership Support Officer update from Holly.
Yes, hello, thank you very much. I hope you can all hear me because I'm having some issues with my headphones. Yeah, perfect. Yes, thank you. So I have been in post now as of January, and I do really feel like I've hit the ground running. One of the main areas of my role is to help with the development of actions falling out of domestic homicide reviews. I think it's been identified beforehand that some of the actions that were coming out of the reviews weren't perhaps very smart, they weren't achievable, and the action owners weren't correctly assigned. So that's what I've been really drilling down with so far. I have so far helped draft 2 action plans from reviews that are nearing completion, one of which I've already spoken with the relevant CSP to ensure that the actions are kind of things that they believe are achievable, because that is another thing that we've established before, that perhaps the CSPs were brought into it too late in the process. So the action plan had already been agreed and pretty much signed off by the panel members in the CRG, and then presented to the CSP, and they then had queries. But at that point, because it had already perhaps passed to the Home Office as well, it was too late, and they just had to do the best with it. So I'm really keen to get them brought into the process a lot earlier to ensure that they are happy, because they own that action plan. So we want to make sure that they feel it works for them. So I've managed to do that with one, which is a Charnwood case. That report has been to the CRG for sign-off, but there were some amendments requested by some of the agencies. So that's not yet completed, but the action plan I'm moving forward with regardless. The other case, it's still very much in the early draft, and I have not spoke with the CSP yet, just because the author has changed their recommendations a couple of times. So rather than keep sending them different versions, I want to make sure that the version that they have is with the recommendations that have been accepted, so that we can then build on it together. So when I actually started as well, because part of the job is to monitor the actions once they've been agreed, and to also support with processing them where possible. So when I started, there were 7 actions from previous DHRs that were all showing as outstanding or overdue. And I've now managed to seek assurance and support with closing them off. And now we're just down to 1. And the deadline for that is actually Monday. So that's very much on my radar, whereas some of them were dating back to 2020. And I do appreciate that COVID did impact those cases, but we've now managed to close them off. Let me just double check my notes, sorry. Yep, so at the moment there are 7 DHRs that are going on, and they're all at various stages. one of those, as I say, has gone to the CRG for sign off. Another one is intending to go to the April CRG for sign off. Hopefully, all being well, it can then be sent on to the Home Office. There is another case which I've not included in that 7. It's a separate number because it's not, a decision hasn't yet been made as to whether a case is going to be complete, a DHR is going to be completed, because I don't know, I'm sure some of you know, it's quite a complex case. It's been going through a judicial review. So that one may come forward into the DHR, so then it would bring us up to 8. But at the moment, it's just 7 active ones. And I'm also supporting with drafting the DHR guidance, because the current guidance that we have on our website, I believe it was last done in 2016, 2017. So I'm aware that the guidance will most likely need to be updated in line with the new guidance that's coming out for domestic abuse related death reviews. I think I've got the title right. So once that's done, I will amend it. But I feel like it's better to have something now, because there's not yet clear timeframes for when that new guidance will be published. So I felt it was better to just update what we've got now and then make tweaks, rather than just holding off and doing it as a job lot at the end. So that will hopefully be sent to the CRG next month also for their sign off, and then it will be published on our domestic homicide review website. I'm not sure if many people are aware of that. It's where we hold the published reports. We hold them on there for a year. It's not the most detailed website, I'll be honest, and that is something that I'm also hoping to adapt, just because I feel like it would be helpful to have a base for all the information about domestic homicide reviews, the CSP's logos, just the little bits and bobs, the admin side of it. So that is something that's on my radar as well. Because what I'm also doing, is I don't know if members are aware, we've got the Safeguarding Matters. It's a quarterly publication that goes out, and we're holding a live event for that in June. And as part of that, we're asking for kind of any volunteers, because it's going to be domestic abuse themed. So if there's any volunteers for anyone that would like to do a presentation, or if there's any agenda items, then that would be really helpful. I know that there is the NSPCC have recently done is it called the monster inside the animation? So that's the kind of thing that we're kind of looking at. So if anyone's got any suggestions, then please do share those with me. And I think that's kind of about it at the moment. That's kind of all the headlines. I currently work part-time, so I don't normally work on a Friday. So I did want to ask, for future board meetings, would you like me to send like a regular report in, or would it be just as and when there's any updates? Please do let me know. And if there's any questions, of course, about what I've just said, then also let me know.
I think some of the meetings for the rest of the year may actually be on a Thursday rather than the Fridays. So
yeah,
but we can have a look at the dates and decide how to proceed.
Yeah, no, I work Tuesdays through to Thursdays. So if you ever need to speak to me, and I will pop my email address in the chat as well, because I'm happy to speak to anybody if they've got any queries or anything.
Thank you very much, Holly. Before I come to Councillor Butcher, I wanted 2 things. Excellent progress on closing down the outstandings. They often sit there dangling. They totally distort the figures. So well done on that.
Thank you.
And I also wonder whether it's worth sharing the details of your event with the Domestic Abuse Board, which happens before this one. Ewan, if you communicate with Ewan, he can circulate that to the board, because there are some people who attend that who aren't here, who may have something to offer you.
Yeah, that would be really helpful, please, because I'd also like to kind of tap into that group as well, because a lot of our actions in terms of oversight, we feel that they'd be best placed sat there. So yeah, no, that'd be really helpful. Thank you.
It might be worth having a chat to Deborah going forward if Deborah remains chair of that group, as to whether you have a more regular slot on there, if you feel that's where you better fit.
Yeah, no, perfect. Thank you. I'll make a note of that.
Sharon.
Just a suggestion for your talks, if you have somebody that's got life experiences, do the talks, because often if you go to a drinking place to be told not to drink, and someone sits there and says they've never had a drink before, you kind of switch off to them telling you why you shouldn't be drinking. Whereas I think if you've got a life experience, people tend to think you understand a bit more and listen a bit more because you've been through it.
Yeah, no, that's a really helpful suggestion. Thank you. So yeah, I suppose it would be helpful if I could tap in with the other group the other board that you mentioned, because perhaps they could put someone forward, or just at least a starting point as to where to get someone. Perfect. Thank you.
Good, Jen.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Holly. That was great. Holly has indeed hit the ground running. She's already been doing some great stuff. In terms of the links, it's kind of chicken and egg. So the Domestic Abuse Local Partnership Board is very much the statutory board in terms of our statutory duties and the MHCLG funding and commissioning. So it kind of, Holly's work bridges across both. So we'll have a conversation about where the work sits, because the DHR is a statutory responsibility of the CSPs, although all the CSPs are at the other board. So potentially what we could do is have Holly at the other board with a report that comes to this board just to be minuted as well. So that might be the way we do it. I also just wanted to pick up really quickly on the judicial review that Charnwood CSP have had. So we were looking at appealing the outcome of that. However, Holly's mentioned the new guidelines and potential change in legislation, which is why we haven't, and we're hearing through consultation that the parameters of DHR's, the thresholds, are probably going to move. So had we appealed that judicial review, it would have cost us potentially up to £100,000, and then legislatively the parameters would have moved anyway. So we've kind of stood back to see what the new guidance coming down looks like before I think we make a final decision, bearing in mind timelines, etc. So just a bit of context in terms of that judicial review.
And I think that's something on my radar as well, is to try and draft a form of briefing paper based on what the new guidance will likely look like, just as a tag on to the guidance for the meantime. But obviously that is very likely to change, and then when the clear guidance comes out, I will be able to update as needed. Because it has been a bit tricky, I think, in making the decisions about whether the criteria has been met for some of the more recent ones that have come through based on the outcome of that judicial review. So I know it's certainly something that the case review group members would find helpful. Obviously, there is a legal advisor in that meeting, but it's just a bit tricky, I suppose, because the guidance is in place, but then obviously that decision has kind of set a bit of a legal precedent. So it's been a bit of a minefield lately, but I think it's hopefully going to get clearer once the new guidance comes out.
Thank you very much, Holly. Does anybody else have any questions or points they'd like to raise before we move on? No? Thank you very much, Holly. That's very good. Now, we were moving on to the mental health treatment requirement, which is hopefully Andrea Knowles. Are you with us, Andrea?
I am, yes. Thank you, Chair. Is it okay if I just share my screen? I'm going to share a quick presentation.
That is absolutely fine.
hopefully this is going to work for us then. Let's go. Has that come through? It's taking a minute. Is that okay for everyone? I can't see you now. Brilliant. Yep. Fab. Okay, well, thank you very much for inviting me today. So I'm going to talk to you about the MHTR treatment requirement, which is a new thing basically that has been launched across LLR, and it links to all of the CSTRs, so the community sentencing treatment requirements. We started this service in October. I was due to come to speak to you in December, but I think your meeting was a lot shorter than was planned, so I joined and everyone else had left, hence why I joined a bit earlier today. So basically I wanted to introduce you to what the team looks like, talk to you what MHTR is, tell you a little bit about how that's going to work, and some input from service users that have experienced that from areas elsewhere. So for us in LLR, this is a psychology-led service. We have a clinical lead, a senior psychologist, 2 assistant psychologists, and a peer support worker that make up the team. And they are the only ones that are able to deliver these interventions because they are very specific and they can't just be picked up by anyone. So it is a psychologically led service. So what this actually means is that we now have a sentencing option from court for individuals with low-level mental health issues. So this is a primary mental health treatment requirement. So it means things that are likely to be managed by your GP. So things like anxiety, depression, PTSD, and things like that. So, and obviously you have to have committed an offence, and that offence cannot kind of cross the community order threshold. So that's where these orders actually sit. So what it actually means for the individual if they are given a MHTR is 12 sessions with either the assistant psychologist or the senior assistant psychologist, and all of that is done with the supervision and support of the clinical lead, so the registered psychologist. We use lots of different approaches, so DBT, for example, CBT. It's very person-centered, so it's around looking at that individual, tailoring the interventions and the support specific to them, so that they can then hopefully go on to manage their lives differently and have better outcomes and not return into the court systems. So again, it's very much tailored to the individual, so we can work around people. They might also have other orders. So the reason it's really positive that Turning Point are delivering this is that it sits very nicely with somebody who might also be given a DTR or an ATR. Because we can kind of coordinate that, and sometimes it might be that they can run parallel together, but other times we might need somebody to complete their ATR, so their alcohol treatment requirement, before they start their mental health treatment requirement, because obviously sometimes it might not be as beneficial if somebody's heavily intoxicated. So this is just a kind of completion of the triangle, if you like. So obviously we've had ATRs and DTRs for a long time as a community sentencing option in LLR. We were actually the last area in our region to be able to launch the MHTRs. So we're really, really pleased and excited that this has been given the go-ahead and the funding to support this. And in a way, it's quite nice that I'm coming now, because if I'd have come in December, I would have been a bit more unsure about how many referrals we'd had, and how positive the launch will have gone. But actually, we've had our first contract meeting with NHS England a couple of weeks ago. And the number of referrals that we've seen coming through is actually higher than they expected for a new project. So that's really good. It means what we did in kind of September and October, launching the project really worked. And we're also seeing people that are actually really suitable for the MHTR getting the support they need. So this is really positive for individuals that maybe would have got a work order or just something else basically, and not addressing the fundamental behind the reason why they've committed the crimes. So basically this again, it just talks to you really about how this works. So referrals can be made at point of arrest, so that can be through the liaison and diversion service, or it comes through probation. In the main, we're getting referrals from the probation officer, and then that will come to our team and we will complete a assessment with them. So that assessment then forms the decision making. So we're looking at that point around, is the person suitable? What level is their mental health need? So is it actually that it should be secondary mental health? And if that's the case, that it's perhaps the symptoms are too severe, then we need to make referrals onwards. So we will signpost and link people in, and also liaise with the probation officer who's referred. If, however, they are suitable, then we will write a report that then goes to the probation officer, when then the court will review that and decide whether or not to grant the MHTR. So it's, you know, it's a very succinct process. It's got probation and us working together right from the beginning, and then with the court support, we will be able to pick up more and more people. So I thought I'd just talk to you about one of these case studies, just very briefly, because sometimes it's a bit boring if I just read to you, but I wanted to give you a bit of an idea of one of the people that we've actually worked with in our Somerset service. So Somerset have been delivering MHTRs for a couple of years, and so they're a lot further down the road in this journey. But this individual presented as very shy at assessment, shoulders were rolled forward, head down, and expressed difficulties in relationships, stating that he had no family, no contact with his daughter, no friends. He was accepted for the MHTR treatment requirement, and basically the worker and his work focused on his areas of struggle. So he wanted to address PTSD and move towards acceptance. He also struggled with self-image, and during treatment they uncovered that this was primarily due to feelings of guilt and shame exacerbated by negative feedback from his family, and this kind of was really embedded thought processes for him. So they looked at those root causes, and looked at some practical measures for him to put into place. So this was done through psychoeducation. So it was looking at the trauma work, so to begin with, and really to help to validate his feelings and experiences. He constantly referred to himself as weird and unable to kind of really develop any self-compassion. So there were a lot of work really in helping him to develop awareness of actually himself and actually feeling that he can accept himself. So it was a compassion focused, person-centered approach, and basically it was working through that kind of trauma with motivational interviewing techniques. So he engaged really well in that. He really enjoyed mindfulness. He worked on breathing, other relaxation techniques, and that was really for his anxiety and hypervigilance, and so that really helped to kind of settle him. He also looked at grounding techniques, lots of positive self-talk, and basically kind of moving away from that questioning of what have I done wrong to actually what has changed. And when considering different things like communication with his ex-partner, trying to kind of work out different ways of communicating, so it wasn't all about blame and actually looking to the positives. So like I say, he engaged really well in the treatment requirement. He completed the MHTR, and basically from the beginning, from when he did his scoring at the beginning around his distress and his feelings of self-worth, he scored really lowly on that scale to a real significant change. So it's a scale of 1 to 20. He was at 4 when he joined us. He was at 17 when he left. And he's also been able to make contact with his child since then. And as far as we know, because obviously we haven't had contact for some time with this individual, there's been no reoffending, so really positive outcome for that individual. So I'll just skip back to my slides. I think I'm probably finished. So yeah, I did put some other feedback on here, so you can't see it now because I've stopped sharing, but basically people comments after they've completed would be, I would be dead if I didn't have the MHTR. I'm really ready to seek long-term therapy now, knowing that this can make a difference to my life. And somebody else saying how much better that they can cope with their anxiety and depression since completing that. Any questions?
Thank you very much for that. I mean, I would just like to say, in a way, all looks very positive, but it's sad that somebody has to end up in the system to be able to get this help. There is, I just, a little piece of me is quite sad that it has to go so far. I mean, it's lovely that they then get the help, but Sharon, you have a question.
But it's more about what I asked in the meeting before, kind of reverts to what Andrea's been talking about repeat offenders that are shoplifting in our town with drug addiction to feed the habits. And I know some of them personally, and I think that falls back to the work you're doing, and they're just not getting onto that and getting that help. And I think what you've just said about MHTR would actually, if they were willing, be the sort of scheme that they should be, you know, involved with, and perhaps make that difference, even if they just tried. You know, I think that would make a big difference.
Thank you, Sharon. Gurjit.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrea. That was great. I'm not sure if you were here when Bob Byrne gave his presentation, but it's just really links in nicely with the discussions that we were having there about trauma and offending behaviour. Just a couple of questions for clarification. I don't know if I just did it. You probably covered it and I probably missed it. So in terms of referrals, how does it work? So a probation officer will refer in, and then it has to go back to court for them to agree it. Is that how it works?
Yes, that's right, Gurjit. So basically, it can be liaison and diversion as well. So it can be literally at point of arrest, somebody can be referred straight into us, or even a solicitor, the individual solicitor can make that recommendation. But it does have to come through to the probation officer, because obviously then it has to go into their pre-sentence report, so that the judge can actually make a decision as to whether, yes, they agree that actually that's the sentence they want to issue other than something else.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, a follow-up on that. So if the individual, because you mentioned that, and it's, again, we talked about it earlier, if they've got the, do they have to have stopped using substances, including alcohol, so they can still be using and have MA and be supported through this team?
Yeah, I think that's the good thing around it. Certainly, obviously, with the drug treatment requirements or the alcohol treatment requirements, they can either run parallel to the MHTR, so we can be doing both at the same time. So if you do have somebody who is using, I don't know, heroin or cannabis or whatever it's they're using, and they get a DTR, we can do the MHTR at the same time if they meet the criteria for it. Similarly with alcohol, there might be times where you make the decision that actually for their treatment it's better to run the ATR first, complete a detox, and then start the MHTR once that's completed, because that might work better for that individual. But we're not the same as kind of other what you're possibly getting at with other mental health services, that it's a big fat no if you use substances in terms of getting the treatment you require for your mental health. So it's a bit different to that.
Thank you. And again, I think, sorry, Chair, through you. Again, I think you mentioned this. So in terms of how long the programme lasts, is it a number of sessions? Is it time, or is it as much as it takes?
It's 12 sessions, and that can be done weekly or fortnightly, depending on what the individual wants. And we don't just sort of finish the sessions and then that's that. We will always refer on to other support agencies that would be relevant for that individual. So it's a soft ending, if you like, because we will then hand over. They're not just left after those 12 sessions.
Brilliant. Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you very much. And I think it's useful, as Gurjit has highlighted, that there will be some individuals for which it's necessary to build their self-esteem through a mental health programme in order to be able to deal with reducing their alcohol or their drugs. Then they're not necessarily one or the other. So are there any other questions for Andrea? No, thank you very much. A sign of a brilliant presentation, Andrea, if I may say. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Chair. Thank you.
I haven't had any other business reported to me. Does anybody have anything they wish to add? No. In which case, the date of the next meeting is Friday, the 20th of June at 10 o'clock. Thank you very much. I personally found that a really useful meeting. I've made a lot of notes. I hope others have as well. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.